Good morning or afternoon, whenever you're watching this, and Happy New Year to you. It's good to be able to say hello and to greet you at the start of 2021. And none of us know what this year holds, but we do know that God holds the future and that He's going to be with us in whatever comes. And the message that I wanted to share this morning is about that. It's about God as our refuge, whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. I know that all of us found 2020 a really tough year. For many of us it's brought loss, some of us it's brought illness, it's brought isolation to lots of us and a lot of challenges. And I found it challenging myself. Lockdown started when I was only 2 months into my new job, and as everything went online, I found that what I thought was eye trouble and turned out to be migraines meant that I was unable to do my job on the computer. And for some time it looked as if I could possibly lose the job. So that was quite an anxious time. But I appreciate the prayers of many of you, and also the cards that many of my friends sent. And one of the cards in particular that encouraged me came from Rachel, and it was a Hannah Dunnett card looking at God as our refuge. And so since that time of receiving the card, God as our refuge has stayed with me and been a big encouragement. And I hope that it might be an encouragement to all of us as we go into the unknown in this new year. When I think of God as our refuge, the psalm that comes to mind, which is one of my favourites, is Psalm 46. And I'll read the first 3 verses of that, which may be familiar to you. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. God is our refuge and strength. A refuge is a place of safety or a shelter in a storm, and that is what this psalm is telling us God is in whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. And that's where we get the word refugee from as well. Refugees are people who've had to flee either from danger or persecution, and they're trying to find a safe place to live, so they're seeking refuge. But ultimately, God is our only safe place, and that's what gives us hope. And it doesn't mean that we will never experience trouble or suffering, but that in that trouble or suffering we can rely on Him. And even when everything we may have relied on in the past is taken away, God is our safe place. And this makes me think about Corrie ten Boom, who, if you haven't heard of her, she was a Dutch lady who, with her family, sheltered Jewish people in the Second World War. And because of that, she and her sister were taken to a concentration camp. Her sister died, and it was obviously a terrible place to be. But through that time, she held on to God as her hiding place, which is what a refuge is. And she went on to share with many people after the war how God had been her hiding place, her refuge through that experience. And through the Psalms we find this idea of God as our refuge being repeated many times, and it's interesting to look at what situations that is used. A lot of the time it's written by David, who had a lot of trouble in his life and a lot of enemies, But he was able to find his safe place in God, and that's what can encourage us. But another favourite psalm of mine, talking about refuge, is Psalm 91. And I'll read the first 4 verses of that for us. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the foulest snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. I love those words, that he will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. It's a picture of a parent bird protecting a chick from whatever situation they're in. And that warm and intimate picture is showing us how close God is to us in whatever circumstances we are and however we feel. And whether we have a challenging job or uncertain employment prospects, whether we're lonely, whether we're suffering illness, God is surrounding us and covering us with his feathers, and he will never leave us. And the last psalm I want to quote just half a verse from is Psalm 63, where the psalmist talks about God as their refuge and help, but then goes on to say, I sing in the shadow of your wings. So if we think about resting, finding refuge in the shadow of God's wings, we have a song to sing of the hope that he gives us, and that is what I hope we will be able to do as we go into 2021. Sing to the Lord, our refuge. And the song that I would like to share after this draws on that idea of how can I keep from singing because God is our refuge. And a really special touch is that the version of the song I've found is sung by Audrey Assad, who is the American daughter of a Syrian refugee. So her family really know what it means to find God as their refuge.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear